Greetings, I'm Craig Lewick, editor and publisher of Scuttlebutt Sailing News, and for the next hour, we're going to be talking about OneDesign Sailing. On behalf of the US Sailing OneDesign Committee, I am hosting what is the first of a series of Starboard Portal programs specifically for the OneDesign Sailing community. We've got a great panel to discuss the current landscape of OneDesign Sailing in the USA. And to start, let's talk about the mission of the US Sailing OneDesign Committee. Joining us is Committee Chair Chris Snow. So Chris, get us up to speed on what's going on with your team.
Thanks a bunch, Craig, and thank you very much for being the moderator today. The US Sailing OneDesign Committee was reformed last fall in direct response to requests from US Sailing members to see more attention paid to the OneDesign community by US Sailing. And we're just getting started. We've got a committee of 13 people representing a wide range of classes and also geographic areas around the United States. Our mission is actually quite simple. It's to help grow participation in OneDesign sailing in the United States across all kinds of levels and classes. We are working currently on 3 different fronts. The first is to create content and distribute content on best practices in terms of growing fleets and classes. And then the next is to facilitate communication directly between people running classes, the various different OneDesign classes in the United States, of which there are quite a few, as you might suspect. And then the third that we're working on currently is actually developing a protocol and a system to measure participation in the long run, so we can see what trends we can uncover and what the trends actually are factually. We are looking for ways that we can help the OneDesign community. If there is something that we can help you with, I urge anybody viewing this or to share with anybody who may be looking for help to reach out to us. The best way to do that is to reach out to either Betsy Allison or Nancy Mazzulli at US Sailing, or to simply send an email to onedesign@ussailing.org. It will get to us, and like I say, we are here to help. Really like to thank everybody who volunteered their time today to participate in the panel, and I'm really looking forward to it. And thank you very much, Craig.
You betcha, Chris. Thank you for your work and getting this rolling. Because as you say, there's a lot of OneDesign classes, and a lot of classes are trying to do the same thing, yet it's pretty easy to operate in your own silo. But there's a lot we can learn from each other, and it's the goal of US Sailing to facilitate those conversations. So why don't we take it from there? And to do so, I'm joined by a panel of OneDesign experts in some of the prominent classes in the country. We've got Laura Jeffers, Executive Secretary for the International Lightning class, Chris Howell, who's director of multiple of J-boat classes, including the J70, J22, and J24. We've got Scott Williamson with the Styling Red Cap as the director of the International Laser Class Association from North America, AKA Ilka, and Zeke Horowitz, who is a sales rep for North Sails, professional sailor, and finds himself in a lot of the different OneDesign classes that we see here in the country. We're all sitting here in 2021 and starting to feel a little bit better about life. And 2021 does feel like a bit of a rebound year. We've heard of these stories of energy and excitement after what we all endured last year, and it's a nice coincidence that we're meeting here today after the last couple weekends where we saw the Sunfish class have 80+ boats at their North Americans in North Carolina, and this past weekend either the Nationals or North Americans for the Snipe class in Annapolis had 50+ boats, and I was told a third of them were under 30 years. A third of the participants were under 30 years of age. The Sea Scout class just had close to 50 boats at their nationals in Michigan. The Etchells just had their national championship in Marblehead with 31 boats. The Ilka class had 200 plus leading the way up in mid-Atlantic in Virginia, and the J24 class with their North Americans in New York with 30 plus boats. So that seems like a good place to start. And considering we've got a couple of people from those events, Scott, why don't you give us a review of the Ilka Nationals?
Well, thanks, Craig. It's great to be here with this panel talking about a passion of mine. And the Ilka class, the International Laser Class Association. COVID, like everybody, it was difficult. A lot of our international events didn't happen this past season, and local events. The focus turned to local pickup clubs, trying to make it work, jumping through the local guidelines of COVID and all the things that happened. And, we're a single-handed boat. So if there was any class that survived it better than most, I would say that we did. But at the Nationals down in Norfolk, hosted by ODU, Old Dominion, and Norfolk Yacht and Country Club, we saw an outstanding turnout. And we had, I guess, in the Ilka 6, what formerly known as the radio fleet, we had 104 participants. We had to split the fleet up. And in the Ilka 7, formerly the full rig, there were 49 sailors. And then in the Ilka 4, formerly the 4.7, 48. So just an amazing 3 days of racing. We saw all of the conditions that one could have, with a ripping current intersecting the Elizabeth and James rivers down there in Norfolk. And it was fantastic. The energy was high. Everybody was ecstatic to be there. I sailed the event, and as well as tried to document the experience at the same time. And you could hardly guess that, we were in a pandemic or coming out of it. I mean, everybody was just so excited to be on the water. And moving forward, we hope to see that continue. All of our national events are in line to happen. More world events are taking place. I suppose that there are still some hurdles to jump if you're going to travel internationally to some of our world events, but it's happening. So it was a great way to begin the season, and hope I can make a few others.
Now, just so we're all on the same page, we're all saying Ilka now, right?
We are. The class has walked away from laser, although I certainly don it here on my self-made cap from an old laser sail that I have. But we celebrate the 50th year of the class. So the truth is, we've changed our name more than once. We started out as the Weekender, very briefly, with Bruce Kirby's design that has lasted the test of time these 50 years. And then he decided it really wasn't the best name for the boat that we enjoy so much, so that the laser became the class name. And we walked away from it, and now the Ilka 4, 6, and 7. And the fact that, honestly, to answer one topic I think you brought up, why have we found some success? And certainly it would have to be the fact that the boat is so available to lots of different sailors, different body sizes and types and ages. I mean, you look at the nationals that just happened. In my fleet, a grandmaster won the event, which is hope for all of us. If somebody in that age category is still rocking it and competing with 18 and 20-year-olds, then the class has got to be doing something right. The boat is a good design.
And that was the Ilka 4 class, right?
Ilka 7, so formerly the full rig. The 4 is the smallest boat. So
I know.
Yeah.
I suspect we could have a whole Zoom hour to figure out how we got from the Weekender to Ilka, but we're gonna move on to Zeke here, who just finished up the J24 North Americans up in Blue Point, New York. How was that, Zeke?
It was outstanding, and that's a gorgeous venue. The club was super welcoming, very, very helpful. It's great to see everybody. 32 boats, I think we had. And the biggest takeaway I had was that it felt like a normal regatta. And I've been very fortunate because I sort of went back to sailing and I was traveling for regattas fairly early on, kind of like late June last year. I kind of made a couple trips up to the Midwest and did some sailing and sort of traveled all winter, but it was never normal. You know, there were no regatta parties. There were not a lot of people standing and congregating at docks, getting to see their friends. You couldn't go in the clubs, or people were afraid to use the bathrooms and things like this. And this weekend, you know, including up to like Charleston Race Week, where they, you know, it was a little bit more normal, but no big parties. And until this J24 North Americans felt absolutely normal. They took very reasonable, you know, safety protocols with COVID-19 and everything, but I think everybody was vaccinated that was there, and so everybody felt free to kind of behave appropriately. And I think it really reminded everybody one of the main reasons we love OneDesign Sailing, and that's just being with each other and getting to congregate and drink at the beer keg and having the sailmaker debriefs, and you know, standing in line for the buffet dinner, talking with people about what happened. And it just felt like a normal regatta, and that was really, really refreshing. And I expect to see more of that as we go through this kind of rebound year in 2021.
Were they able to, was the regatta able to include social events after racing?
They were, and you know, I think it was a little bit like they started slow a bit. They had one major dinner, but that was like a normal under the tent. You know, the keg was flowing, and there were people standing in line for the buffet dinner that the yacht club put on. But every day there was a sailmaker debrief. In fact, it was in a bar on one of the evenings. You know, standing around at the bar. You know, the bar was open, and people were enjoying being inside the club and visiting with their old friends and talking about sailing. So I think, and that's what it's really all about. That's what keeps OneDesign classes so strong, is the sharing of knowledge and getting to socialize with your friends that live in different corners of the country or the world, and getting caught up. So it was extremely refreshing.
It's interesting. This past year, I think we've all recognized what we value, and it's, as you say, the ability to interact. I mean, I was picking up some Chinese food for dinner last night, and it was so refreshing to see the smile of the person handing me the food, because the food workers are kind of like the last stage of mask reveal, and the importance of seeing someone smile. And I struggled last year with the sport, because the after sailing is such a big element for me, to be able to hang out with people. And if we're all, you know, everyone's got their shields on, it just wasn't as much fun. So it's going to be neat going forward. It's all going forward, but we can't really fully go forward without reflecting a little bit about 2020. And we can talk about challenges, but you know, I think there's also were opportunities last year, and Scott kind of hit on it. I can speak for my local area in San Diego. We've never had much of a laser fleet. But because of the government restrictions, it's all the kids could do. There was no, you could sail with family, but with the juniors, that didn't work because of the 420s and the FJC sail. So suddenly these lasers came out of, I don't know where, garages, backyards, racks, and they were out there. But I think there was also, you know, some new event formats that we saw come out of the sailing areas. Zeke, was there anything in Annapolis that you that got rolling, that got people interested?
Yeah, there was, and I think that's a really good point, because we learned a lot. We learned some new things that worked really, really well during that kind of pandemic sailing year. And one that really sticks out in my brain and I'll remember forever was the Annapolis Yacht Club. As soon as the waterfront sort of opened up here in Annapolis, they put on a regatta called the Bridge Fiasco, which I think they ripped that off of somebody out in San Francisco. They do a 3-bridge, I think. But we had the 2-bridge Fiasco, which was just show up and whatever boat you want. It's 1 or 2 people, and they set a starting line, and they set a drop buoy near the Navy Bridge and another one out by the Bay Bridge. And the rules were you started in either direction across the line, and you just had to round both buoys in either order that you wanted and finish going whichever way you were coming from on the same starting line. And I think there were some like 180 boats that went out. And it was a lot of people's first time getting back out there. It was everything, you know, there were foiling wasps and foiling kite boarders. There were OneDesign J22s and 24s and stars. And I went out with my wife, Emmy, and we drank, you know, 1, 2, 3, couple dozen adult beverages and just sent it. It was a beautiful day. We could race against our friends that we couldn't otherwise, you know, socialize with. And we ended up finishing neck and neck with a star boat right next to us, you know, going the wrong way across the finish line with a bunch of J24s coming at us. And it was just plain fun. You know, I don't think they had trophies. They may have had trophies, but nobody really cared. It was one of the most fun days I've had on the water in my life. And it's something that I hope they do again. I hope we see more events like that, just creative fun. Bring out a sailboat and let's go have some fun. And I hope we can build on that.
Laura, one of the elements that it seemed like we were reminded of was family sailing last year. Again, perhaps because of government restrictions that it required us to sail within a bubble, but that's family sailing. That's something the Lightning class knows how to do.
Yeah, it's nothing new for the class, but it definitely helped strengthen some of our fleet sailing last year when it was restricted to, you know, just sail with family members. But the family sailing also led to a lot of local sailing. And some of our fleets experienced some of the best fleet racing they've had in years because people were had to stay home and they didn't have anything else to do. And so they chose to go sailing. And so fleet sailing was definitely a strength in 2020. And we've seen that carry on through this year too, which is nice to see that's come back.
Which is a massively important function of OneDesign class health, because we do tend to get caught up in traveling to this place and that place, but without fleet strength and local fleet strength, the structure kind of can crumble a little bit if all we're doing is racing all over the place and nobody's participating in their local area. So it'll be interesting to see how well we remember the joy of simplicity and sailing at home. Chris, from a class administrative level, were there lessons last year or things that we're trying to overcome as we roll into 2021?
Well, thanks for having me. Sure, there were a lot of things that we learned. There were some trends. You know, the bringing on the mark bots was one thing. You know, having juries that were you know, put together on Zoom. A couple things like that I think will carry over to some degree after we get going in 21. And I'll you know, back up what Zeke said. The 24 event we had this past weekend was an incredible event, and the energy was super high. And I feel for the the organizing authorities, and I'm sure all the classes were this way. They, you know, they had all these events were put in place and then canceled, and then they had to start all over again. And so it was a real relief for these folks to actually see all their work come together.
And correct me, but the J24 North Americans, they were supposed to be in that same venue last year?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was
So
last
they
year May, and then we moved it to May again, and then had to postpone again into June. So it was a real start and stop for the OAs, and that has been the case for many of them. Right.
I'm curious, and do you think that and this can, you know, anyone can answer this, but have we moved? I mean, one of the hurdles of running anything last year was contact groups. So, you know, we got everything online as much as we could. We did everything in Zoom calls as much as we could, to the extent of skippers meetings. Do you think we're done with skippers meetings, or are we going to come back to that? Scott, how'd you handle that this weekend?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think Zoom skipper meetings are here to stay, honestly, because so we did the nationals this way. I mean, when you think about it, 200 plus competitors. How do you get to a skippers meeting in a practical way anyway? I don't know that you really do. Certainly protest committees and, having that happen in that way is very practical and opens it up to people who otherwise maybe wouldn't be able to show up. You can do it more timely. So there's some technology that I hope continues. And that's how it was done. We had social events as well, which everyone welcomed. Every state is still very different. In my travels, I'm sure you guys can testify this as well. It's sort of a hodgepodge, reopening depending on where you go. And I don't know that that'll change, but we're on the right trend in the right direction. On the junior sailing front, which I spend some time doing as well, one thing that I hope continues is I'm out of Annapolis too. I'm a sailor at SSA at Severn Sailing Association right next to AYC. And all the local clubs on the bay, we band together and started Zooming and talking and collaborating because everyone last summer was trying to figure out, how do we do this? And US Sailing really, I think, did a great job kind of leading the way of basically saying, hey guys, let's collaborate because, yes, it's going to be different everywhere you go, but there are things we can learn from each other right now. And I hope that continues because I'm sure everyone here has junior sailing background. There was a time that I remember where the sense of community was very strong, but that over the years, you don't quite see that anymore. And I think the fact that we suffered a year or plus of it being gone certainly reminds folks the importance of it, right? I mean, yeah. So I hope that.
Yeah, Zeke, as a top level competitor, do you lose something from a Zoom skippers meeting versus an in-person skippers meeting?
I don't know. I've sort of been thinking about it as you guys, as Scott was talking about it. And I think it comes down to what class you're talking about and what the general feel is. Because there were certainly times, at a J70 regatta this winter when, the skippers meeting would have been had at 6 o'clock or something like that after a long day of practice, and you got an early day the next day, and there's a bunch of teams and a bunch of boats and all at different clubs and different logistics for launching points, and to be able to hop, just grab your phone and listen to the skippers meeting while you're sitting at dinner or having appetizers with your team was just plain efficient and good. That said, I think there's also, it comes back to the social gathering thing, and the skippers meeting can be a big part of it. I mean, if there's a barbecue with hamburgers and hot dogs and keg beer at the Thistle Nationals with all your friends, and you're standing by the lake and everybody's at one club, why not have the skippers meeting with everybody together? So I don't know that it's going to be an overarching theme across the classes, but I think we proved that it can be done in at events where it's more efficient and where maybe it's a top level championship where, socializing is always important, but maybe there's some teams that are really like, no, it's dinner at 6 and in bed at 8 because we've got the Worlds tomorrow. Great to know that it's an extremely efficient way to do it. And maybe they just, you could at the very least offer both options.
The skippers meeting used to be this means at which you gave the competitors information. And then it kind of evolved to, we've got these notice of race and sailing instructions. And, if you ask the wrong question, they'll say, read those.
Right.
But I think it's also evolved in terms as an opportunity to introduce the host. Laura, do you think that, that's better done in person to introduce the host and give thanks, to kind of get the ball rolling?
It is a nice way to kick things off and welcome things because a lot of the times you have a welcome party immediately following the skippers meeting. So that does, one lends to the other, so that helps. But
it sounds like it's this thing, if you can schedule it right, it's this valuable thing to do in person. But if you've got a shorter regatta, it might be better to do in Zoom.
It does help. I think we had the nude skippers meeting a couple days prior, which was really helpful because it really gave people that were just arriving the opportunity to already know what's going on, where to put boats, how the schedule is working, mainly because of COVID, because things were a little different than the year before. And it was kind of nice to have that. So you could possibly maybe do two coming, because they do kind of lend themselves to different information. The skippers meeting is informational packed, but then the skippers meeting at the event leading into the welcome party, you can introduce people, you can thank your sponsors, you can, it's more of a welcome event. So maybe it ends up being two things, but yeah. The other
Well,
thing.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just kind of going to transition to on the Zoom part. Last year, we found that we usually have our class meetings at our major events, at our North Americans or our Worlds. And last year, when they were canceled, we still needed to conduct business. We found that our participation between our European and even our South American countries was so much more than we have ever had at our events, that it was much more productive to actually have a Zoom class meeting. And so I think that is here to stay. Even East Coast, West Coast, North, South, it's just easier to have more participation and representation at those meetings, being able to have it over Zoom. So that's definitely one thing that's changed and is probably here to stay because of it.
Right. It's and I think it's an important point. See, kind of it is that we can't lose track of the value of being together. Things, we can't just suddenly do everything online, because there's a huge value in doing things together, like a local fleet. You can't have a local fleet meeting on Zoom. You got to go to somebody's house. But when there's other logistics involved that may encourage participation, the Zoom method is good. And even as we're sitting here on Zoom right now, I'm not sure how expert we were on this technology 18 months ago. I remember my first Zoom call. I recognized my speaker was so bad and my camera was so bad that, of course, I placed those orders about 6 weeks after everyone else had placed those orders. So it took a while, but now we're all pretty savvy at this stuff. And the educational component has really roared along too, in terms of all these webinars that might have occurred during the off season, now can easily occur at any time. I suspect, Zeke, in your profession, you're doing a fair amount of education online now.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, that was kind of the first thing, when this all hit North Sales, and it hit North Sales pretty hard. We took the mentality of, one, let's get faster, let's invest in the R&D, and two, how do we continue to reach our customers and reach our friends and talk about sailing? And we quickly jumped on doing Zoom, much like many other sailmakers, and US Sailing did a lot as well. Everybody kind of hopped on, but we had so much participation in our webinars and so many positive comments and questions afterwards. I mean, if we did a webinar for the Flying Scott class featuring Greg Fisher for an hour and a half, we have questions by email for the next month, with people saying, hey, I watched this on YouTube and I heard Greg say this or Brian say this, and what did that mean, and what were those tuning numbers? And it was no doubt an unbelievable way to engage with our customers and our friends and talk about sailing. And it wasn't long, it was after maybe our fifth one, where our marketing, our worldwide marketing team, which is substantial and take marketing very seriously, we all hopped on a Zoom call with them, and they said, guys, Zoom and webinars, this is here to stay. Once sailing is back on, we're doing these, because these are an incredible way to reach a huge number of people. And throughout the winter, I did a lot of J70 sailing down in Tampa, and it was led by Ed Furry from Sail 22, did a terrific job. And we got on Zoom meetings every day after sailing, and a Zoom meeting, the Tuesday after everybody got home. And the participants were there, people who weren't participating were there, and just the whole class was able to learn from that. And it's a pretty darn efficient way to do it. And I was kind of thinking about that at the J24s this weekend, where we had the in-person sailmaker debriefs, which were fantastic as always, but it's only the people that are there and only the people that can hear and aren't too inebriated to not take anything away from it. So it was, I I think they're here to stay. I think it's a really effective way to learn as a group.
Chris, you've seen that too with your classes, the after a day of sailing, the gathering, the debrief. That's got a lot of value though, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. That's really become, something that the competitors really enjoy. Zeke mentioned the Tampa, the whole Florida circuit with the 70. They always have these debriefs, and people come away with so much information, and it really changes the game for them. And it's a lot of people sharing information where that there were times when that just didn't happen. It was a little too much. People trying to keep things to themselves, and they've really done a great job. And I credit all the sail makers for sharing information and trying to bring up all the competitors.
It's an important component of OneDesign Sailing for people to be able to come together. And there's always the trophy winners that everybody knows. And then there's the other people in the fleet. Maybe they're new, particularly after 2020. Maybe people were buying boats, joining classes. There might be this means of which we need to blend, because people join OneDesign classes to be a part of something. You could race PHRF and you're never going to really be a part of something at the same level as you are in a OneDesign class. It's a fraternity. It's a club. However you can make it more inclusive seems to have a lot of value, and inclusive without awkwardness. And those debriefs probably are that kind of thing, which brings people together for the same reason, other than as opposed to everyone goes to the bar and they sit at their own separate table with their own crewmates and not really blending quite as well. Though I suspect lasers, unless you're that person standing by yourself along the wall, you're always together. You're probably complaining about how much it hurts to hike.
Sharing ibuprofen.
Some of us start out that way. You prepare your body for that abuse.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, looking forward and trying to figure out, where we are. Let's talk to the class administrators. Are people joining, renewing their memberships? How are the numbers doing? Laura, why don't you start?
Actually, we saw a slight dip in 2020 with COVID, which was expected, but it was not nearly as bad as we thought it could have been. But thankfully, this year is strong. And right now, year to date, we're better than we were in 2019. So people are anxious to sail.
That's awesome. Chris, how about your classes?
Agree. The classes are back to 19 levels at least, and actually there's a little more enthusiasm. It might be a slight bump from 19. So that part's gone really well. And even the local fleets have done a good job of it. And there's sometimes you'll get a few boat owners who don't want to become members, and that because they've kind of rejuvenated at the local level, they're putting a little more peer pressure on each other, and that's really worked well to get the membership levels up. And that just allows us to distribute information to more people and get more people talking about the different activities.
Now, we've got people on this panel that are involved in probably the strongest OneDesign classes in the US. For a class that isn't on this panel, perhaps is more of a regional class. As a class administrator, Laura, what would you say to those people that are trying to get people to re-up and get rolling again, and maybe struggling to get out of the 2020 doldrums?
The value of your asset, your boat, is only going to increase with the value of the class. So that is one point that's very easy to make. That is, if your class is strong, your asset or your boat that value is going to remain strong as well. So that is one selling point, is to help protect your asset.
Right.
But it's also, it's more than that. It comes down to the community. of sailing and that family aspect of it. A class is only going to be as strong as its cheerleaders or its volunteers. So if you want, your local or regional class to be stronger, you need to help make that happen. You need those.
It's more complicated than just saying you should do this.
Yes, you need to act.
There's pieces to the puzzle that need to be there for people to want to renew or join. Is that all? Does that all make sense for you, Chris Howell?
Absolutely. And the whole idea that the class needs to be member driven. It has to be clear that it's the members making these decisions about rules and regatta locations and so on. And once the members see that, then they say, yeah, I want to be part of that. And I want, someone's listening to me. Someone's actually taking my input and making decisions or at least considering it. And that's really, really important for the growth of the class.
Laura, something that I had become aware of within the Lightning class was an effort to revitalize some of the older boats. What can you share on that topic?
We have a very large component. We call them our classic boat chat group, because they do have a chat group that they message each other with. And there's over 450 members to this group. And over the past year, whether someone's trying to pick up a new hobby or they have more time on their hands, but the refurbishment or building of wooden boats has really gone through the roof. There are, I think, some crazy statistic of like 350 messages per month over the past year of people helping people figure out what part goes where, or what kind of varnish to use, or what is this part, or how does this go together. So that community has been really, it's been fun to watch. The other part is there have been a lot of new people asking new questions in that group of more, how do I put the mast up, or more basic sailing type questions, which is refreshing. And so we're trying to actually figure out how to help that group even more with possibly some webinars and things like that in the coming months, more on a basic level of actually how to sail and get out on the boat that they refurbished.
Well, for you, Zeke, I got to imagine that everyone was rubbing coins together in the sailmaking industry. Has there been a nice rebound in terms of sales?
Yes, the sale of sails has gone quite well so far in 2021, and no doubt we took a big hit in 2020, and it was a little bit uncertain. A lot of our business relies on our ability to forecast with regattas, the schedule, and who's going to be going to them, where they are, and all of this. And certainly we were hopeful that there would be some pent-up demand. It was like, is it going to be pent-up demand and a lot of people buying sails, or is it going to be folks that bought sails in 2019 that are still pretty good and they didn't use them at all in 2020? What's it going to be? So difficult to forecast. And thankfully the pent-up demand seems to be beating the people who, or just the classes where people didn't get to use their sails. So we're back to about the 2019 levels in the OneDesign aspect and offshore OneDesign. So it's very, very good to see. It seems like people were excited to go sailing. They're excited to, I think a lot of people are excited to support the companies and the people that they weren't able to support last year. So it's really good.
So speaking of pent-up demand, the Ilka class had some serious pent-up demand in 2019, 2018, 2017 with regard to supply. It was, if you're a laser sailor in North America, you had a hard time getting parts. And the class has been completely reformed. You've got all these new suppliers. These got to be some pretty. It's got to feel pretty good being a single-handed boat. You flew through. You planed through 2020. You're coming out of 2021, and there just isn't much wrong in your world.
We all miss the laser for sure. The name laser. No, we're not super excited about that, but we will take it because, as you say, the supplies are there. That we have more builders than we've ever had. Things are looking bright for the class, and there's strength in numbers, and the fact that we reach so many sailors at lots of different entry points. In my local, we've been talking about local fleets. It's so important to have those cheerleaders, locally. We have districts. It's so important to have volunteers that step up. These are guys and gals that are just passionate about the sport and inspire others to be so, and join and be a part of building that local fleet, because it all starts there, as others have said already. And though I've stepped into this role for the North American division of Ilka, I still am my fleet captain at SSA and still the district rep, and I enjoy some of that more than anything else. It's wonderful to serve in this way, but to make sure my community is strong and to every year welcome those dozen or so new members into my local fleet and help them either rediscover the class or welcome them for the first time in the boat is exactly what we need. And it boils down to some of the things we've said already, making sure everyone is taking away something from it, because there's only one winner of every regatta. And if all those other components are not there, then folks come and they leave, right? If they don't find, something rewarding in the fleet, they don't see a path for their personal growth and enjoyment, then they don't stay long. So thankfully, parts are here and parts are coming, and builders are across the globe now. And yeah, there's great excitement. I think we to speak to the membership, I know that we had a drop during the COVID times, but I think membership, at least in North America, is reaching new heights. Now that Canada is opening up, I know that our Canadian members are renewing and finding a reason to be back involved in the class they love, and we hope that continues, of course. But something that others have said before, it's so important that members understand and feel that they have a voice and are part of the discussions. Our class has changed over the years, just like many have. We've adopted a new sail of one of our rigs, the 7, the full rig. We've adopted carbon fiber lower spars, and all these things were quite controversial, and in some cases still are. But to have the membership be a part of those discussions, I hope to see that continues and grows more. Every time I go to an event and talk to the members, that's what we discuss. Why was this decision made, and explain to me again the choices that we're doing as a class, and all of that is for a desire to be a part of what we're trying to do. So the more Zoom is here to stay for that reason alone, and these webinars are a great way to build that community in the way that we can't just because of geography. I mean, we're across the world, and what a better way to connect in this way when that's the truth. Our 50th year, I know we're having some Zoom meeting across the globe at different time zones, just so that we can all connect in this way. So that'll be for us September 11 and 12. We're looking for those dates to see if we can challenge local areas to get as many lasers, as many Ilkas out sailing, whether it be racing or just going out. That's our challenge for that day on the 11th of September this fall.
That's awesome, and it seems like we're doing okay in this country. The domestic events are able to be scheduled with some confidence now that we're almost to July. To look at the calendar, as I'm beginning the championship regattas, it was one thing to host local stuff, but when it involves travel, it was a whole nother deal. And to see these regattas that are occurring and coming up, and I look at the Thistle Nationals, it's their 75th anniversary, so that's a big deal. They've got over 100 boats that are going to be coming to Cleveland. Immediately around that same time, Laura, the Lightning class has got a lot of stuff going on too. I mean, the Lightning class is so impressive because you guys have you have a women's North Americans, a junior North Americans, a masters North Americans, and an open North Americans. That's all feeling really good for your class?
Yeah, it is. We're super excited. The WJMs, or Women's Masters Juniors, is nearly sold out. It's a 70 boat max capacity, and there's just a few spots left. The juniors is actually serving as our US qualifier for the Youth Worlds next year in Sheboygan. So that's a big regatta for those kids. And, you know, we keep seeing lots of good numbers with that event, the Women's Masters Juniors. And then the week after, we have immediately following that is our North American Championship at Edgewater in Cleveland. And we have over 50 boats signed up so far, and we expect some more to come. Again, that's another world qualifier for the US. So, there's lots of good things coming.
And I got to give a shout out. I looked at the registration information for the WJM in Jamestown, PA, and I saw that perhaps one of my favorite people in the world, Birdie Whirling, is behind that. So Birdie, if you're listening, a little shout out to you. We have history. It's all good. You kept me on track a lot of years ago, and I love you for it. So and thanks for your continued commitment to the Lightning class. Now, Zeke, I saw you in the entry list for the Flying Scott North Americans that are going to be later next month in Westport, Connecticut. One of my favorite classes, and I think behind me is I proudly have my Flying Scott second place North American trophy. So you're going to be doing that with your dad, is that right?
That's right. Yeah, that is a nice piece of hardware back there. I thought it looked like a Flying Scott. Yeah, we're going up there. There should be about, I thought the boat on top was. That's nice. That's even nicer. But yeah, heading up there early July, racing with my dad. It'll be the first time we've sailed together since February of 2020. So we're just excited to get to hang together and do some sailing. Should be a beautiful venue. They've been working really hard. It's another one of these, supposed to be there last year. So it's, 2 years in the works for that group. And they've done a tremendous job getting organized. 50 or so boats, I think, are coming. And it should be really fun. It's another, it's a great club, fairly low key. It's going to be a lot of people just being together at a beautiful spot and going sailing. So really looking forward to it.
I've great fondness with the Flying Scott. It's the only boat where I've ever attempted to launch it off a water ski ramp. We didn't get very far. We lined up the ramp and the wind and the spinnaker and didn't get that far, but we did, I believe, set a Guinness World Record of 19 people in the Flying Scott for sail. So
well, I don't know if that's still a record, but I think I've seen the footage of the original promotion video where you can water ski behind your Flying Scott. We've yet to try that yet, but
all right. Soon. Well, I want photos, Zeke. Well, as we're talking about the success of these national regattas, we can't not reflect on the challenges of the international regattas. Even getting our friends up in Canada are on the other side of the border, and we're not able to see them participate or U.S. sailors participate up there. The Melgus 24 Worlds were going to be in the spring in Charleston. It was just a little bit too soon in terms of regulations and international travel. Laura, I know that you've been juggling the Lightning Junior Worlds. Is that correct? Correct.
Yes, they were supposed to be, oh gosh, how many times have we? They're supposed to be last summer, and then they were supposed to be this summer, and now they're going to be next summer. Thankfully all at Sheboygan Yacht Club. And as Chris mentioned before, all of our regatta hosts have been very happy to accommodate, the year out rescheduling. So that's been very helpful.
Now, Chris, I'm not sure how tenuous your life has been because you've got the J22 Worlds and the J70 Worlds. J22 will be in Corpus Christi, Texas next month. J70 Worlds are in Los Angeles in August. Why don't you enlighten us about how hard it is to host these events?
Well, my nails, I'm chewing my nails at this point, waiting to see if we can get people into the country. We're finding it's really difficult still for people to come to the US. It seems like each country has a different attitude about it, and has different things they're having to deal with trying to get visas and so on. So it really has been a nail biter, especially the 22 Worlds are in July. We still can't get anybody out of Canada. So, I mean, it's really, which has always been a big part of the 22 class. So that's made it really difficult, but you have to plan these things and, build it and they will come, so to speak. And, we're trying really hard. US Sailing has been really helpful with helping to get the paperwork that some people need to get their visas. That's been, Nancy's been involved with that. With the 70 Worlds in August, we do expect a pretty good international contingency. They're plugging away. Most of them have had to charter boats because bringing a boat here has been virtually impossible. But we've been working hard to find them charter boats and, help out the international competitors as much as we can.
There was pretty much every world championship was canceled last year. And there's always reasons, good reasons. At what point though, does a world championship not feel like a world championship, and so you cancel it? You're not getting that international flavor. Are there tiers that you're finding you're working with? You've got to have a certain number of countries, or does that factor into it at all, Chris?
Yes, World Sailing has criteria for a world championship, but they're pretty lenient in the sense that if you miss the criteria, it's still a world championship. You have to miss it for a few years in a row before it really becomes an issue for the international class. I think that, coming out of when this all started, we were making decisions back last February. There was kind of the attitude, well, we're not going to do a world championship unless we can do it right. We want to make sure everybody can get there. We want to have our parties. We want to be able to, everything's got to be perfect or we're not going to do it. Well, obviously, after a year of sitting on our hands, that attitude has changed a lot. And people have, there's been a lot of enthusiasm for let's build it and let's try to get as many people there as we can. Let's focus on the sailing and not the parties. And let's see if we can make it happen. We were that way with the 24s. It just happened this past weekend. We just had to just keep pushing. And fortunately, things fell into place and we were able to do it and the COVID restrictions lifted. And we're really hoping that as the year goes on, we'll see more and more of that.
That's awesome. And I'm not sure about Corpus. I know, having done a lot of OneDesign sailing and traveling in this country, it's not always easy to get people to come over the mountains and go west and compete in a regatta on the West Coast. But the participation's been pretty good, Chris?
Yeah, for the 70 Worlds we planned it in California, many years ago, and they were one of the same groups that had to cancel and restart. But we've had a pretty good group who's moved their boats to the West Coast, taken them out there, done a lot of lead up events, and really tried to make it, and it has helped the West Coast fleet in a lot of new owners out there.
One of the best, as we've been talking, I come back to this interview that Chris Snow did recently, and I suspect is posted on the US Sailing website. Chris did an interview with Mike Dorgan, who has been building the fin fleet in San Diego from basically nothing to, I believe, the biggest fin fleet in the US. Chris Snow, is that right?
I am not 100% sure about that, but it has to be one of the biggest. They have 30 boats here locally in little old San Diego.
It's and pretty much what Mike did, and I don't know, I was thinking, there's a perception that everything is easy in San Diego. You know, we've got a lot of history and there's a lot of great sailors. And so why shouldn't you be able to build a big fleet in San Diego? But you know what San Diego doesn't have is proximity to a lot of stuff. I mean, we're a day's drive for pretty much anywhere. So if you want to pick up a boat in Texas, or if you want to pick up a boat in Colorado, or Washington, it's a long way here. But what Mike Dorgan did was pretty much what anyone can do anywhere. And the word's already been mentioned in this past hour. It's a spark plug. It's the person that rolls up their sleeves, that gets the boats, that connects the people, and facilitates the communication. And it almost, I mean, I'm sure it will never leave Mike's hands, but it's gotten momentum, and it's kind of magical to see, you know, to watch. And it's been just in this past 3 years to watch it occur. But it's the same thing that I've witnessed so many times about successful stories for local OneDesign area. So, you know, props on you, Chris Snow, for bringing that to light.
No, I mean, everybody on the call so far has touched on it, and you know, it's at the root of what makes the sailing that we all like to do possible. You know, are the local guys who pitch in and see a need that needs to be filled and make it happen. So if there's anything we can all take away from this call today is, you know, the next time you see one of those people, go out of your way to pat them on the back and thank them, because it's, you know, nobody's getting rich doing it. That's for sure.
Hey, well, I hope that everyone has enjoyed this conversation. Before we tap out, though, I wanted to kind of loop back to the US Sailing OneDesign Committee and what it's trying to do. A big component of that is their presence on the US Sailing website, OneDesign Central. There's a portal for OneDesign Sailing. If you go to the US Sailing website, the navigation up at the top, there's a lot of tabs. One of them says competition, and look for OneDesign Central in the drop-down menu. There's an effort, Chris Snow, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a lot of work trying to make sure everybody is listed on that. So if you go there and you don't find your class or fleet, you need to contact somebody. Is that right, Chris Snow?
That's absolutely right, Craig. Yeah, the idea is that basically to make information available about all the different classes and fleets around the country, so that no matter where you are, you can, you know, find sailing in your local area and you know, have up-to-date contact information. So you know, take advantage. If you're running a class or a fleet, take advantage of that and make sure your information is up to date on that site. And that would be, if you need any help with that, you know, please contact Nancy Mazzulli at US Sailing.
And also too, as a means to facilitate conversation, there's a lot of content that's starting to get posted up on that website in terms of how to build and feed your fleet. Is that right, Chris?
That is correct, and there's more coming, and we are, you know, looking for ideas. And you know, like I said at the beginning, if there's a topic that people would like to see the committee address, or you need help with something, you know, do not hesitate to reach out. We've got, you know, a lot of people that are anxious to sink their teeth into to helping. So you know, we're here to help the people that are helping us go sailing.
Hey, well, I certainly want to thank Laura Jeffers and Chris Howell and Scott Williamson and Zeke Horwitz, and I've really enjoyed the opportunity to host this session. I hope that everyone's enjoyed it, and as I'm being told, there'll be more of these sessions. Looking forward. There's been comments that have been submitted that are great Zoom sessions all by themselves. So these are being noted. So I guess just keep posted, and hopefully we'll keep this rolling. Is that right, Chris?
That is absolutely right. We're planning to, you know, we don't have an exact schedule, but we definitely have a list of topics that we're starting, and you know, stay tuned for more.
All right. So what game show was it where everyone just signed off with one of, I forget.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'd like to say goodbye. Thank you, everybody. Adios.
Thank you, Craig. Well done. Thank you, everybody. Good job.
Thanks. Let's go sailing.
Here, here.